Hello, everyone, and welcome today as we talk about ownership and management, your golden time. My name is Tim Bridgers. I'm with Live Oak Bank, and it's an honor to spend some time with you today. I appreciate ICCFA and allowing us to partner with them on the Back to Business webinars. I'm going to share some material with you today as I get that brought up. As we do that, please be reminded that you do have the ability to post things in the chat as we go, and I will keep an eye out for that. So don't hesitate to post questions, comments, ideas, and I will do my best to address those as we flow through the material today. I believe that this topic is so crucial to really any business across the small business landscape, whether you are currently managing or operating a small to large business, and really even if you are managing a large company, whether it's 5 rooftops or whether it's 1,000. I believe that there are some takeaways and some things to be reminded of. I have the pleasure of leading 2 businesses here at Live Oak Bank. I've been leading the funeral home and cemetery lending division, and have been doing that for going on 10 years now. And last year I started our property management lending division as well. And so hopefully I can give you some nuggets today. And I also hope to learn from you through your comments and questions. So feel free to do that. Quote by Abraham Lincoln. I think many of you have seen this before, but it's a great perspective as we enter into the conversation around time management, leadership, and how that impacts your business. And Lincoln said that give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. And when you think about this, when you read this, it seems obvious. It seems to be very common sense. But oftentimes in the hustle and bustle of business, we don't stop long enough to sharpen the axe. And I believe that if we spend more time in strategy, in looking at opportunities and the trade-offs of those opportunities and the value they bring, we will enter projects more effective, more efficient, and ultimately way more productive in the earnings of the business, and oftentimes more satisfied customers. A survey through Timular had a few bullet points that I thought were very, very pertinent to the conversation today, talking about workload, procrastination, and then priority around different day-to-day tasks. 20% of adults are chronic procrastinators. That's probably no surprise. I think it's human nature to somewhat procrastinate, especially in areas that may not be very popular to us on a day-to-day basis. 80% of people feel like they have their workload or do not feel like they have their workload under control, right? And so only 20% do. So I think purely by that statistic alone, we have some opportunity to address. That means there's a chance that maybe 50 to 80% of us on the call today may feel like we really don't have our workload under control. And when we really think about what that means, I think that it really means that we have not assigned a priority to the work task that we have to accomplish on a day-to-day basis. Working with the family, paying enough attention to our team, their needs, what motivates them different from their colleagues, and how all that aligns with the company's mission and vision. I believe that is the chaos that oftentimes distracts us away from the word control. Then we see 51% of every workday on task with low to no value. So again, it goes back to priority and making time to sharpen the axe, which I believe includes identifying the priority of the task that you need to accomplish, whether it's in a week, a month, a quarter, or maybe even thinking about a year to 5 years out, which we should be doing as a business. 82% of people do not have a time management system at all. So when we think about time management, when we think about what the benefits of that are, I truly believe that when we get down to the nuts and bolts of time management, what we're really doing is fostering the ability to drive huge efficiencies, high profitability, engaged employees, an owner or a manager who is in tune with their people and that are present. Some people say where their feet are, and obviously know where they're going and where they've been. And I believe that ultimately drives the bottom line up and drives margin and efficiency. All those things seem, again, common sense, but when we really think about it, the day-to-day distracts us away from many of these elements that ultimately make the business successful. And we're actually going to highlight some of these things today. We're actually going to go over one of the biggest studies ever done on 100 CEOs of some of the biggest companies in the world. And there are some trends there that I believe we can take away from that to be successful in our business. So this description you see on the screen here is a really good descriptor of what you go through every day, either as a manager, as an owner. And if you're not aspiring to be, this is what you have to look forward to. So integrating direct decision-making with indirect levers like strategy and culture, balancing internal and external constituencies, proactively pursuing an agenda while reacting to unfolding events, exercising leverage while being mindful of constraints, focusing on the tangible impact of actions while recognizing their symbolic significance, and combining formal power with legitimacy. This is a complete balancing act of being an owner or a manager. Every day presents a different element. Every person presents a different personality, different aspirations, different needs. And ultimately, the customer also presents different needs and aspirations. And it's constantly a tug of war. And I believe that at the base of this, we as owners and managers have to have clarity of our priorities, our mission and our purpose, and even our strategy. And a lot of times it simplifies the chaos. This image somewhat describes that chaos to some degree of the day-to-day and maybe even how your mind feels when you get home from work on any given day. And today is meant to help clean some of this up, right? Today is to hopefully help you create some systems and take away some nuggets that can help organize your day and ultimately drive profitability in the business. So the Harvard study that I mentioned previously was 60,000 hours of observation data and 100 plus executives. It's the largest study done of this nature to date. And really, what we're talking about here is time. The study observed 100 CEOs, again, from some of the largest companies in the world. And they went home with them. They went in the office with them. They studied everything from their personal time of exercise, sleep patterns, how they managed family time, and how they managed work, and how that overlapped. And ultimately, it comes down to preserving and being an expert with time. So the survey results were very interesting. What they discovered was that CEOs worked 9.7 hours per day and 62 and a half hours a week. Okay. 9.5 hours a day. I would say for some of you, you're saying, okay, well, I would say that's average, right? That's not uncommon, unfortunately. 60 hours, 62 hours a week, maybe slightly above average for some, but there are weeks to where we all experience that. They conduct business 79% of the weekend days. Not surprising, especially now with our cell phones and the ability to work remote with technology. All that is done is pretty much tempt us to work around the clock. They conducted business on 70% of vacation days. 70%. It's quite a bit. Ultimately, that means that they really have minimal time away from thinking about work. I slept 6.9 hours a night, which is interesting, and I want to come back to that. And I exercised 45 minutes per day, which is also interesting, and I want to come back to that. So if you look at the top three areas, I think all of us would agree that 70% of vacation days, 79% of the weekend, and 62 and a half hour week, that's somebody who's working pretty hard. And there is a high probability of burnout. There are a lot of tasks, there are a lot of communication, and there are also a lot of potential distractions. But also notice what these individuals also do to mitigate and balance that. They're getting adequate sleep. I would say 6 to 8 hours for the average person. I'd say closer to 8 based on research is probably more adequate, but I would say 6.9 hours is adequate. That's good. And then exercising 45 minutes a day is great. So I want to point that out, that if you're listening live now or listening to this recorded later, and you are in the top three, but you are not participating in the bottom two bullet points of sleep and exercise, the first thing that I would do is change that. Okay. Now, I will tell you that I actually have a background in exercise and fitness back early in my career. And I can tell you that to this day, I can vouch for it being an integral part in my day-to-day. For me, it's like brushing my teeth. But I can tell you the days that I don't do that and exercise or get adequate sleep, I can guarantee that my productivity and energy and mental clarity is drastically different on those days and those weeks. Individuals that really have never had exercise in their routine probably don't feel the difference because they don't know the difference. I would highly encourage you to make sure that you are finding a way to get those bottom two bullet points integrated into your routine. If you're not sleeping well, you are not as productive, you're not as clear, you're not as sharp. If you're not exercising, the body aches and pains and the troubles you're going to have from a physiological perspective are going to distract you away from that too. So some takeaways there, but also some key observations. Some other observations that they did in the study were actual the day-to-day, and I think this is very interesting. So one of the elements that they dove into were actually the email habits, okay? And with the email habits, what they noticed with these CEOs is that the way that they responded to emails with their team was very sensitive, meaning that if they responded at night, it could create a tailwind of communication to all the direct reports. A message coming down from the CEO at night sends a message that maybe everyone else needs to also be up and working at night. Sending emails over the holidays creates this subconscious expectation that those people also need to be participating and working on the holidays. And the study found that if that is enough of a habit, a lot of times it creates kind of a chaotic communication flow and some unhealthy habits. So what they found is these CEOs actually avoided that behavior and really set an example of being proactive in their communication with email and not reactive, being patient with those responses and responding in an appropriate time frame, obviously barring any emergencies. That was one factor. And I think the point here is that one, I think it also helps preserve the culture and the way that we communicate even through email. There are hints and implications through when we do that. And I think it's important. The other area was the fact that emails can rob your time. And I believe these CEOs were really, really sensitive to allowing it to rob their time. And what I mean by that is oftentimes if you're a manager and an owner, a lot of people are going to CC you and forward you FYIs on about everything. One, they want you to see the work they're doing. They want you to see that they're working hard. They want you to see their response to things. And for them, it's like, okay, I'm building credibility with the owner because he is seeing what I'm doing or she is seeing what I'm doing. And I think that you want to try as an owner or manager to create a habit and a culture to where they don't need to do that for you to have exposure to their abilities, because that's just going to rob your time having to shift through and read all the emails. And then it's been proven that you naturally feel obligated to respond to those. Okay. So one step here is to clean up your inbox, delegate some of those emails to your direct reports, or simply educate your team and your staff on the types of emails that you would like to receive and ones that you would not like to receive. And it'd be amazing how clean sometimes that day-to-day is. So I think between the ability to really drag you down and really rob a lot of your time is what happens in email. And then that ends up becoming the preferred communication method, which is what you want to avoid in the culture of your organization. The other area was explicit personal agenda. This is big. Really what this means is, as an owner and a manager, every day you should have a very explicit purpose and agenda for the job. And I think that should stem from a day-to-day agenda to a weekly agenda, and maybe even more of a long-term agenda of maybe even a quarterly goal type agenda. And what that agenda is going to do is going to keep you as a manager and an owner accountable to where you need to be spending your time, the people that you need to be interacting with. That's actually going to give you freedom to spend time with other folks that you may typically not have time to, because you're not going to be spending time on things that's not adding value or not meeting the agenda that you have agreed to for yourself. And again, I believe that I would say that a majority of people in the day-to-day grind probably do not have an agenda. Because back to the opening quote we had, not many people are stopping long enough to sharpen the axe, right? If you are pausing, having a planning day, even taking 30 minutes, an hour to plan your week, maybe over the weekend, taking 30 minutes to sit down and think about your monthly, quarterly goals, that's going to help you back into an agenda that's really going to drive your day-to-day. So between being disciplined in your email, getting that communication chain lined up, creating goals for yourself, for your team, for the company, and then building an agenda off of that, between those two things, you've really just streamlined your workflow, and things are actually going to get done instead of a bunch of things still floating in the air. And then we have to advance the agenda. It's one thing to be clear on the agenda and be disciplined to it, to create those priorities around that agenda, right, in your day-to-day, but it's also about advancing the agenda. I would say it is human nature sometimes to want to do it all ourselves. It's human nature for us sometimes not to trust others as much as we should. And I think that it's important that we have the right people around us, our direct reports, that we trust enough to delegate. And this is extremely important. Before you can delegate, you have to know what's a priority. You have to know what you should keep, what you should pass off. So the agenda is a prerequisite to advancing the agenda through delegation. It's essential. And then your planning time and your organization around email communication is prerequisite to even that. So I think, again, advancing the agenda is you identifying the areas that you can let go of and the areas where you need to be focused, and then finding those people that you can trust with those delegations is going to be extremely important to the business. Not to mention, you're going to empower those people, and those people are going to work harder for you because now they think and know you trust them. And I think that it's a healthy snowball. Integrative mechanisms. So we have taken the time to stop, plan, create priorities around an agenda that is aligned with the mission and the purpose of the business or the company. Okay. And now we are delegating. Now we're empowering people. We're organized. We now have the time to think, to plan, and to grow the business. Okay. To spend time with people who need us. And now we're going to form integrative mechanisms to make that effective throughout the organization. What do I mean by mechanisms? Well, for example, something I tried this year as a manager is I actually created some KPIs for our team, key performance indicators, right? Goals, related to numbers. And I made those goals visible to my team. And I own a live document, actually, so they can actually go in anytime they want and they can see where we are in different areas of our business. And I educated them on those KPIs, what they mean to us, why they're important, prioritize them, and let them have privy to those at any time. It's been an incredible change to our culture in terms of maintaining a priority on what we need to be working on. But it's also created a really healthy competitive spirit. And it's also created transparency to where now in our conversations with the team, it's more about how we're going to achieve those goals. Wow, let's celebrate while we're ahead of them, or let's talk about how we can get caught up on a particular metric. So whether this is a communication system that allows you to delegate more, whether it's you exposing more to your team, how we're accomplishing our goals and our strategy is absolutely important. And right now, if you feel like the communication is siloed, the goals, and really what's driving your business is kind of siloed just to you, then other people may not really understand the why of what they're doing. They may not understand why you're telling them to do certain things and why not to do certain things. And I believe that this integrative process will empower everyone in the organization. I believe that strategy, in addition to organization around agenda and priority, is just as important. However, as a manager and an owner, if you do not have the time to strategize, then you have a problem. And if you're not prioritizing around an agenda and delegating, then you're not going to have time to strategize. And if we're not strategizing, we really have no clear direction of our business. If we're not strategizing, we're not thinking about how to catch up with our competitor or be the number one, the number two, the number three in the market based on where you are. We're just not doing that. And what we're doing is we're being reactive. We don't want to be reactive. And the way not to be reactive in business is to be proactive and to make time for strategy. Strategy takes a clear mind, it takes a clear agenda, and it takes support. So we have to delegate first. We have to communicate. We have to create these mechanisms to communicate the goals and where we stand. And then we have to have time to strategize on where you envision the business going, even as a manager, right? If you see that your team is not tracking towards the goal, you need some strategy time. If you're an owner and you're thinking about the next acquisition, where's that going to be? What type of business am I buying? Is it a high cremation business? Is it a blend of traditional versus, are we doing a flanker brand type business to serve a different market need? What is it? You have to make time to determine that. So now that we kind of went through this survey talking about these CEOs and their habits and their challenges and some things that we can do to really help be more productive in our day-to-day, let's talk about time management. When we think about strategy, when we think about you building an explicit agenda, when we think about you prioritizing that agenda, those are pretty big responsibilities. The outcome of those decisions is truly the success of your company, the success of your team. How you choose to communicate those things is so important. So I believe that it is fair to say that those types of decisions need to be in the most productive time of your day. And some call that the golden hour. And you know what that is for you. Like right now, you're probably thinking about, oh yeah, I'm a morning person, like before anybody gets to the office, or actually while I'm eating for lunch type person, or maybe I'm at the end of the day, which I'm not. I myself, for example, if there's some pretty challenging things that I've got to work through, maybe it's building a very unique, different educational series of presentations that I love to do, but the building of that can be daunting. It can be mentally taxing. Doing research on a new industry that we might want to lend money to can be daunting. I do better with those things early, typically between 7 and 8:30 a.m. Eastern in the morning. That's kind of my brain power time. So it's quiet. I'm fresh. I've just eaten. Typically, I've exercised. I feel motivated. And this is really, really important. So what are some tips related to maximizing your golden hour? And I'll be honest, this seems really elementary, but this could be the next big development and invention of your business to take over the market. That's simple. So let's talk about 6 steps to build and to preserve your golden hour. Plan ahead of your golden hours. Have some idea of what you are going to be doing the next time you plan to set aside for this golden hour. And it may not be every day. Maybe you know that you've got a gap on Friday morning, tomorrow morning, or Friday morning, and you're going to dive in. Have sort of a plan for that time, and be mentally prepared to dive into that. Have somewhat a mental plan of action going into that. Narrow your focus. If you go into your really strategic strategy planning time with no initial ideas of what you're going to focus on building out, it may be a bit chaotic and really easy to lose focus and end up not maximizing that time. This is one of my favorite points, is perfect your environment. This is big. I have certain things that I like when I'm going and working through very challenging things. And I've done this presentation in person, and the attendees laughed at this, but it's me just sharing, being honest, what I do when I'm needing to have mental creativity. When I was doing research for the new business that we launched at the end of last year, it was daunting because I was researching an industry that I didn't know anything about, and was trying to make a decision of how we should lend money to that business. And it was tough. It felt like I was back in college again, writing a 35-page white paper, and really trying to do it to make a business decision. And what I found is that my mind worked really well. Obviously, it needed to be cool. I needed to have peace and quiet, and I needed instrumental music. I found that music with singing was distracting to me, but I found that instrumental music actually motivated my mind, and I felt like it made me mentally stronger, which may sound odd, but it worked. So every time I did that activity of building that white paper and doing that research, I was actually playing that music, and it really pushed me through. That may sound silly, it may be different for you. Maybe it's at a coffee shop. Maybe you're really creative, working on your laptop instead of a desktop, like big screen type environment, or maybe that's your environment. So think about your environment. Come in fresh, come in prepared, think about your environment. It goes a long way, I promise. And then communicate your goal an hour with your team. If there's something that you've really got to focus on and you need an hour and you know it, while you're planning ahead, go ahead and tell your team, hey, listen, I'm going to be out of pocket from 7 to 8 a.m. tomorrow. I've got some planning. I've got some brainstorming to do. If you need me, if it's an emergency, please reach out. But hey, if we could hold off till after that, that would be great. Do impactful work. Make that time very impactful, right? Make notes. Have the information at your fingertips to make the best informed decisions. Be productive. And then schedule the downtime. Obviously, that would be a part of planning, but don't just wing it. Don't let it happen as it happens, because if you just try to let it happen organically, you're never going to have downtime. So plan that ahead, and I think that you're going to see some really good strategy come out of this time. And to be honest with you, my favorite golden hour is when I'm purely thinking about what we're going to do next. It's going to shake up the market, and it's really, really fun to do, but you have to set aside that time and make it really intentional. And win the day. Why is this important? I think when we talk about winning the day, we talk about being disciplined. And I would say that not every day needs to be this way, but there needs to be days during your week to where you win the day and you maximize every hour. All of us are at different places in our life. Right now, I have 2 young teenagers at home. And for me to win the morning is essential. Because typically they're asleep if they're not in school. So I can maximize that time, and then I can give them the time they deserve in the evenings. And that's important. And so that balance is crucial. Me winning the day is not working 9 to 10 hours and neglecting my family. That's not winning. Winning is me giving 100% to my job, to my strategy, to my team, and giving 100% to my family, which is why I'm doing that, right? So let's think about how can we win the day? What are we neglecting? Because whether we're neglecting work or family, neither of those is a winning recipe at the end of the day. It might be a winning recipe in the short term, but it's certainly not one in the long term. And ultimately here we want longevity. So when we think about the outcome of what we're talking about today, like why are we talking about this? Some of you may be saying, Tim, I thought you were an expert in lending capital to funeral homes across the United States. Well, I am. And we happen to be the largest lender in the funeral home space, and we're proud of that. We care about our borrowers and our customers, and yes, that's what we do. But ultimately, what we also do is we help support people inside of this organization at Live Oak Bank to thrive, to be motivated, to understand the mission and the purpose and the vision, so we can ultimately take care of our customers and treat them like the only customer. And to do that and to experience growth and profitability and people and priorities, we have to have organization around our vision, our purpose, our agenda. We have to have discipline around how we manage our email and our day-to-day and how we delegate our task. And if we're not doing any of those and we're just being reactive every day, we're just letting work come to us, and then we're giving our attention to what is the loudest, most squeaky wheel of the day, we're not being profitable. We're not experiencing and driving growth. We're certainly not focused on our people because the squeaky wheels are robbing that time from others, and the squeaky wheel agendas are robbing the key agenda. And then we're certainly not thinking about priorities. So another element of winning the day is having these 4 elements in mind for your organization, and I believe that it'll make a huge impact. So when we think about the outcome of these efforts, we really think about a business that has a good culture because we're balanced. We see a business that is growing, and ultimately we're driving better profitability, which is job security for you and your team. It's a happy customer. It's a customer that is constantly being heard, and it's a company that's constantly evolving. But to do that, we also have to pay a little bit of attention to our people. I want to pivot just a bit because the time management piece is allowing you the time to focus on your people. So I want to talk about that. When we define employee engagement and empowerment, there's several categories that I want to talk through as we go through kind of the last 20 minutes here. And we first identify those that are engaged, or you that may or may not be engaged in your own business. Obviously, engaged is those who are actively involved, enthusiastic about, and committed to their work and their workplace. And that's obviously, that's pretty obvious. However, the one that is a silent killer is the actively disengaged team members. Those are workers who have miserable work experiences. But it's not as easy to identify that. You may not see that when you see them face to face because they may put on a mask to that. You may not see it, but you may end up seeing it in the productivity in the business. And then you have not engaged, those who are generally satisfied but are not cognitively and emotionally connected to their work or their workplace. I would say that if you have a somewhat of a small team, let's say that you manage one rooftop and you're around your people every day, you should have a pulse on these 3 categories for every team member you have, hands down. If you're across 50 rooftops and you're the principal of the company, that's going to be a little bit more difficult. However, that's where you should be delegating management to help you identify that. Absolutely crucial. Why does engagement matter? Well, companies with highly engaged employees outperform their competitors by 147%. Pretty clear, right? The people are a representation of you, the vision, and the owner of the business. It's also a representation of the service that you're going to provide. It's clear. Higher productivity. It's pretty clear. People are engaged. They want to do the right thing. They want to do it. They want to excel, and they want to serve your customer. Stronger customer relationships. It's a given. Better retention. Okay. Ultimately, people who are disengaged, more times than not, pay becomes less and less relevant to them, and it becomes more about their passion and their purpose. And then 21% higher profitability, right? That's a lot. And I think that alone is worth the retention, and the profitability is worth taking a deeper look into the engagement, the culture of your organization. But why do they typically fall short? Why do these engagement programs that we try to do typically just kind of fizzle out? Studies have shown that companies are not selective enough about whom they name as their managers. Look, the management team moving in the same direction at a healthy pace on the same page is absolutely crucial to the organization. It only takes one manager speaking against the organization to really throw a pin in this effort. And it's absolutely crucial. We have to make sure we have the right people that we trust to delegate to and to represent the communication and the efforts of the company. So I want to share 2 models with you as we round out today's information. And these 2 models are crucial. These 2 models are something as an owner and a manager that you should be aware of. And I would highly recommend, and we can send you a version of this presentation so you can have this. You can also research the Tuckman stages of group development. And every owner manager should be aware of these stages, and we're going to go through them. because understanding these stages will help you understand where your team is and how you need to respond to that. And every one of these stages has a different management requirement of you and the way you approach things. The first stage is the forming stage. So these are where opportunities and challenges are presented. They're on the table. This is where people are behaving independently. Why? We're getting a feel for one another. We're sometimes sizing up one another. We're trying to get a gauge of who we can trust, who we can't. We're trying to understand the problem or the challenge, the goal. Currently, we're still uniformed on issues and objectives. We haven't formed too many individual or independent opinions yet. And ultimately, we're still pretty well behaved, but internally focused, right? We're still sizing people up. We're still seeing where we fit in this game. How do we help? Do I feel adequate to this project? What is my place here? Although people are still a little more internal about that. Then we'll morph into the storming phase of the business to where now we're getting a little more confident of our place. We're starting to gain trust. We're starting to be more vocal at the table. And that's where the introduction of conflict starts to come in. Not necessarily bad conflict, right? This is where we're deliberating over one direction over another. We're debating about this decision or going into this market or changing the name of our company or changing the style of our company, adding this service. Do we want to focus more on being a company focused on memorialization, celebration of life with weddings and celebrations, birthdays, or do we want to focus purely on the end of life service, right? That's just one example. And this is a key phase for you as an owner and a manager, because this is where, one, you're going to identify people, their passion, their purpose, how they handle other people's feedback that they may disagree with, but it's also your job to keep everything on the tracks. And then we're in the norming stage, where this is where we've kind of passed the storm phase. The leader has made a decision. The leaders have made a decision based on the feedback. And now we're resolving disagreements and personalities. We're resolving those personality clashes, right? We're now sharing in a common goal. We've gotten everybody off the negotiating train, and now we're in one accord. Okay. And then we're trying to avoid conflict at this point. We are trying to focus on the objective and the goal. And then you can see that none of this is wrong, right? These are just truly the phases that you're going to go through as you move through your business. Some businesses are going to have a longer norming phase. Some businesses are in a startup mode, and they're going to have a long period of storming. But you have to identify that. Performing, norms and roles established, right? So now we've identified the target. We've debated over it. Now we've decided on what we're going to do. We're moving in this direction. And now we've got to focus on performance, where we're designing the roles to accomplish those goals. We're focused on the common goal. We're being educated on the tools we need and what tools we need to accomplish those goals. And the managers, the owners, are highly engaged to make sure that those resources are available, they're allocated for, and that they're constantly getting feedback to make sure that we're on the right track. Huge. Keep in mind here, your job the whole time, depending on the role, is to keep everybody looking this way. And then at the same time, keep the culture in line. And then adjourning, right? This is the stage where the project's been complete. We've been successful. This is where you celebrate. This is where you identify how everybody came together. This is where you celebrate goals. This is where roles are redefined. But at the same time, this is an area of diminishing productivity because people have been working so hard. They're mentally fatigued. They're celebrating. That's okay. And now it's time for you to get back in the forming stage again for the next objective for the company. So just being aware of this. And the biggest thing here is, as a manager and a leader, you're responsible to understand these things. And hopefully it's bringing some awareness to that. The last model that I want to talk about is the motivational force model. And I would say to you that this might be more important than the Tuckman's model, because this right here is really starting to get close to what your employees value. And let's be honest, your team members are at work to provide for themselves and or their families. A big driver in why we work and why we do what we do is to provide the best experience we can for our loved ones, to take care of them and to create experiences with them. And we know that, and that's okay. We can have passions and purposes beyond that, and we should, but we know that's a big piece of this. So let's talk about it. If you do not understand what motivates your people based on where they are in their life at that moment, you may not be aligned with their aspirations. And if you're not aligned with their aspirations related to compensation, you may be missing the boat related to empowering them and motivating them. This model outlines that. What it basically says is that we have expectancy, meaning that will effort lead to performance, right? Do I believe, based on the tools that I've been given and the job, do I believe that my effort is going to lead to performance? Instrumentality, will the performance lead to rewards? Pretty simple. A lot of individuals and companies don't trust that. They don't believe that if they work really hard, there's going to be rewards. Are the rewards important or valued? Okay. So again, as a leader, if you haven't strategized and built a framework for performance and rewards, and you haven't had enough power hour time or golden hour time to align that with the people that you're delegating those objectives to, then do we really have rewards that are even valued by those people? Are we giving certain rewards to people that it's not helping them? One example I think of often, because I respect single mothers so much, is the single mother having 2 to 3 kids at home, and those kids are still young, capital intensive situation there, right? Are your goals aligning with their needs? And then motivational force. This is the byproduct of those things. If we have confidence that the effort will lead to performance, and we have the confidence that performance will lead to rewards, and those rewards are aligned with your employees' aspirations and needs, then you're going to have somebody fired up, excited, motivated to do an incredible job. Not to mention if you're spending adequate time with them. It's very, very important. I hope you've taken away a few nuggets today. As a few reminders, as we round all this out today, is one, have you defined the goal for your company? Do you have a mission statement? Do you have a vision statement? Do you have monthly, quarterly, annual goals? And are those goals visible to your team? Crucial. How about define what actions will lead to performance? Key indicators, right? Those are what key performance indicators are. Every business should have a key performance indicator for their team. And most likely at different levels of the organization, you're going to have different KPIs or key performance indicators. Have I provided evidence that this is even possible? Have you come up with a goal that is so lofty that they're not going to achieve it anyway? Well, that's not going to work. You shouldn't waste your time doing that. Are my people confident to perform the actions? Have you trained them? Have you put them in a position to succeed in performing that goal? And do I know that rewards, do I know what rewards my people want? That's where you have to spend time with them, right? We talked about that before. When you are more clear on your agenda, your explicit agenda, and organized and disciplined, not to get caught up in some of the things you should not be spending time on, you're going to have more time for your people. Have I set up a system to reward them? Am I verbally appreciating their actions and results? Absolutely crucial. And then in conclusion, Robert McNamara says that brains, like hearts, go where they are appreciated. It's pretty simple. At the end of the day, when we're thinking about the culture, when we're thinking about empowering our organization, driving productivity, we really have to have people that feel a part, that feel appreciated and valued, and that you prove that through not only your time with them, but the result of your work, your efforts, your strategy, and ultimately the growth of your business. I hope you've enjoyed today. I appreciate your time, and I hope you have a wonderful upcoming weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.